Okay, scholars, so for today, for our last review before our quiz tomorrow, we're still going to have our quiz on Thursday this week, even though we had it on Friday last week. We're going to work on decimal equivalence. What does equivalence mean? That's right, equivalence means equals to. So we're going to work on thinking about what decimal and fraction is equivalent to tenths and hundredths. The first example I actually want to give you is using base 10 blocks. Okay, so I have a 100 block and I also have some 10 sticks. And I want you to kind of forget what we know about this, meaning that we know that this is made out of 100 ones, and we know that this is made out of 10 ones. But I want you to imagine this whole entire square that represents one whole. It could represent a whole pizza, it could represent a whole pie, or it can represent anything that is in the shape of a square. So maybe even like a garden, for instance. And I want you to imagine if you were to cut this one hole into 10 equal sized pieces. What do you think they would look like?
Well, you were probably thinking that they would look like 10 sticks, right? So if I cut this into 10 equal sized pieces, I can put all these sticks on top of the one hole to represent it being cut into 10 equal sized pieces. I've got one more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, when we go back and we think about what the 100 block represented in the beginning, we said it represents one whole. We cut the one whole into 10 equal size pieces. So each piece is now 1/10 of the whole square. Let's go ahead and count these by tenths. That's right, tenths. Starting with 1/10. Ready, go. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, 10/10. So how many tenths equal one whole? That's right, 10/10 equals one whole. You should have that written down somewhere on your scrap piece of paper. I'm just going to go ahead and put mine in the corner. Now let's say we go back to our one whole, and now we cut our one whole into 100 equal size pieces. What do you think that would look like? If you were thinking that it would look like all these little ones on top, you're right. And as you can imagine, it would fill up this whole entire block, and there would be 100 of them. So if I filled all of this with all of these ones, there would be 100. And that means that each one would represent 1/100th. Now I want you to think about this in terms of size. This is 1/100th of the whole. This is 1/10 of the whole. Which one is bigger? That's right, the 1/10 is much bigger than the 1/100th. Well, I wonder how many 1/100ths would make 1/10. If you were thinking 10 hundredths would be the same as 1/10, You're right. You'll notice that when I put them side by side, they are the same size. That's right, same size. So 10 100ths is equal to 1/10. They are equivalent. That's right, equivalent. We're going to continue to use this idea to help us with our guided practice questions today. Again, fractions are only equivalent when they are the same size. Be sure to have your guided practice and your scrap piece of paper ready for questions number 1 through 4. Okay, dudes, got a little split screen action going on here. Let's go ahead and read number question to ourselves, and then I'll read it aloud. So question number 1 says, enter the unknown number that makes this equation true. So let's go ahead and write that expression. 20 100ths equals blank tenths. So we're going to rely really heavily on what we already know to help us with all of these questions today. So let's look at this example that we discovered together with the 10 sticks and the hundreds blocks. When we had 10 100ths, they were the exact same size as 1/10. So what if we doubled that and we had 20 100ths? How many tenths do you think that would be equal to? You're right, it would be equal to 2/10. Easy peasy, right? Let's go ahead and write our answer in the blank. Now you'll notice that with the expression, it only asks for the numerator, that's right, numerator. Numerator is the top number in our fractions. So we don't need to write 2/10, we just need to type 2. Go ahead and read question number 2 to yourself. Question number 2 says, what fraction could represent the decimal 0.5? Go ahead and write 0.5 on your scrap piece of paper. Now let's go ahead and write 0.5 in words using its value. 0.5 is equivalent to 5/10. Let's write 5/10 in words. Well, we know that 5/10 as a fraction is 5/10. The question wants us to figure out how many hundredths is equal to 5/10. So just like the first question, we can write that it's equal to blank hundredths. Continue to use what we already know, especially from the first question. Well, if in the first question we notice that 2/10 is the same size as 20 100ths, what do you think about 5/10? How many hundredths would that be equal to? Sweet. It would be equivalent to 50 100ths. You might be able to imagine all of those ones lined up together, the same size as those 5/10 sticks. Now, just like question number 1, you only need to type the numerator, that's right, the numerator. Our numerator is 50. So 5/10 is equivalent to 50 100ths. Go ahead and read question number 3 to yourself. Question number 3 says, enter a decimal equivalent to the fraction below. That fraction is 2 1500ths. Go ahead and write 2 1500ths on your paper. When we write decimal fractions into decimals, there's a couple of things we want to pay attention to. The first thing that we want to pay attention to is what is the denominator. So since the denominator is hundredths, we know that in our decimal point, it is going to be 2 spaces to the right, to the right, and it'll be 2 spaces. How many spaces? That's right, 2 spaces. So then we already know that if we ignore what's in the beginning, 15 hundredths is 0.15. Well, that 2, it represents a whole number. And all of the whole numbers are where? That's right, they are to the left of the decimal point. So this 2 is a whole number. So we write the decimal equivalent as 2.15. That is the same as 2 and 15 hundredths. Go ahead and type that in the blank space. Again, we're writing the decimal equivalent, which is 2.15. Go ahead and read question number 4 to yourself. Question number 4 says, what is the solution to the expression below? Choose all that are correct. When a question tells us to choose all, does that mean we choose all of the answer choices? No, it means that we only choose the ones that are correct, which also means we're going to have more than one answer. Let's write that number sentence on our scrap piece of paper. 71 hundredths plus 3 tenths. Since the question is asking us to find the solution, we simply just need to add these two amounts together. Well, the first thing that I notice is that our denominators are not the same. We cannot add fractions with different denominators that's right, different denominators. And the reason for this is because they may not be the same size. So our goal is to find an equivalent fraction that is the same size. Let's start off with the 3 tenths. Since we spent the few other questions practicing tenths and hundredths, well, how many hundredths is equivalent to 3 tenths? Well, if we know that 5 tenths is equivalent to 50 hundredths, then 3 tenths must be equivalent to, that's right, 30 100ths. Now that we have the same denominators, we can add our fractions together. When we add our fractions together, do we also add the denominators? No, we don't add the denominators because the denominators represent the size. Well, 71 hundredths plus 31 hundredths would be 100 100ths. That's one of our answers. Let's go through the answer choices to see if 100 100ths is one of our correct answers. Looks like it's letter B. Go ahead and click letter B. That is equivalent to 100 100ths. Since the question is asking for us to choose all that are correct, we know that there's more than one answer. In the first example, we changed the tenths to hundredths. Could we change the hundredths to tenths? Awesome. 70 100ths is the same as 7 tenths. We know that we need to keep the denominators the same, so 7 tenths plus 3 tenths is equal to 10 tenths. Looks like that's our second answer. go ahead and find the choice that's equal to 10 tenths. Look like that's option D. Nice job, scholars. Continue your decimal equivalence in your independent practice today. Use all of the questions to help you because they will be fairly the same. If you haven't finished your work from Tuesday or Monday, please make sure you do that today. Happy Wednesday!